Hello, it's Aubrey and welcome back to another video. Today I am talking about the Cleveland torso murders that took place in September of 1934 or 1935 to August of 1938. Let's dive in. 13 people in total were killed. Out of the 13, 3 of them were identified. Most of the victims were sex workers, and all of the victims were decapitated, with some even being castrated. Most of the time, the heads were never found, and many of the people were dismembered. In no instances were the bodies fully intact. The killer was nicknamed the Cleveland Torso Killer, or the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run. Kingsbury Run was a poor town with dangerous conditions. This caused the nickname Hobo Jungle. East of Kingsbury Run, there was a very sketchy area, nicknamed the Rolling Third, which consisted of bars, gambling dens, and brothels. Throwback to September 4th, 1934, a late summer day turned into madness. Police found washed-up body parts on Lake Erie's shore. Police believed that it was a torso of a middle-aged woman. The only parts of her that was found was her torso, thighs, arms, and hand. Her skin was textured with leather. They soon found out that was because the body was covered in a preserving chemical that slowed down decomposition. Other body parts were found, but investigators never found a head. The woman was later nicknamed Lady of the Lake. Although nobody confirmed this was a part of the torso killings, many people still believe this was the beginning of a 4-year massacre. September 23rd, 1935, a typical fall day in Ohio. 2 teens were playing softball on top of Jackass Hill. They found the remains of 2 victims. The first was a headless man, totally drained of blood and completely nude, with just a pair of socks. The only way investigators could identify him was his fingerprints. He turned out to be Edward Andersey, a 28-year-old man, a Cleveland local. Edward Andersey was a regular at the Rolling Third, and the second victim appeared to be a man, was castrated and decapitated. This unidentified man was covered in the same preservation chemical that the lady in the lake was drenched in. On January 26, 1936, 2 baskets were left right next to the Hart Manufacturing Company. The baskets both contained the very neatly arranged remains of Florence Palillo, a 44-year-old sex worker, barmaid, and waitress that lived in the Rolling Third. Her body was decapitated, so police had to use fingerprints. More of the remains were found later on Orange Avenue, but again, her head was never found. On June 5th, 1936, 2 boys found a head wrapped in a pair of pants on Kingsbury Run at the East 55th Street Bridge. The very next day, a body was found dumped without a head between train tracks about 1,000 feet away from where the head was found. The body was completely drained of blood, and the cause of death was decapitation. Youch. He was nicknamed the Tattooed Man, and despite his face being used as a death mask and put in a museum, he was never identified. On July 22, 1936, a 17-year-old girl named Marie Barkley found a 5th nude and headless body while hiking by Clinton Road. Police looked around the area for clues and was not disappointed when they found the victim's head in bloody clothes less than 20 feet away. The abundance of blood indicated that the unidentified body was murdered where it was found. Investigators believe that it was murdered 2 whole months before the Tattooed Man. Once again, on September 10th, 1936, Jerry Harris, a man from St. Louis, found 2 halves of a torso while waiting for a train. The pieces were floating in a creek. Investigators found more body parts upon arrival. The fire department searched the waters of the creek while over 600 people looked over police and investigators' shoulders while they were investigating the bodies, which fueled the fright in the town more. At this point, Peter Morello and Martin Zalewski both interviewed 1,500 people by themselves. February 23, 1937, another victim was found by a man looking for driftwood on the shore near Bradenall. This case was weirdly a lot like the Lady of the Lake. The lady was not decapitated. The man found the upper part of the woman's torso first, then 3 months later the bottom half was washed up and was never identified. Russell Lawyer, a 14-year-old Cleveland local, discovered a human skull on June 6, 1937, beneath the Lorain Carnage Bridge. When investigators arrived, they discovered a whole female skeleton in a burlap bag. Police had to use dental records to identify the victim, and they believed it was Rose Wallace, but that was never fully confirmed. On July 6, 1937, members of the National Guard seen two halves of a body floating around in the Cuyahoga River. The upper half was wrapped in newspaper and placed inside of a burlap bag. His heart was missing and his organs were missing. Most of the body, except for the head, was recovered. The victim was an unidentified 30-year-old man. On April 8th, in 1938, a Cleveland WPA worker, Steve Morosky, noticed a thing floating in the river. Morosky poked the item with a stick and realized it was a woman's leg. A month later, the police pulled out a burlap bag with the woman's body parts in it. Police determined that the unidentified woman had drugs in her system through her bloodstream. Many people believe that on July 22, 1950, Robert Robertson was a victim of these killings. Cleveland police believed that he was dead from 6 to 8 whole weeks. He was found on Davenport Road, which is now known as the Norris Brothers Company. Robert was decapitated, like the other victims, but police never confirmed. Robertson was an alcoholic and had a record. He also didn't have a good relationship with his family and was very alone. In May 1938, an anonymous suspect who was nicknamed Dr. X was brought to the Hotel Cleveland for questioning. Dr. X is suspected of being Francis Sweeney, a World War I vet who had the ability to perform amputations. Sweeney lived near Kingsbury Run, fell into depression and drunkenness. Sweeney had been on the police radar since 1935, however, he never confessed, but police had no evidence it was him, so he never got charged. On August 16, 1938, 3 scrappers looked for materials near the finished Lakeshore Boulevard on East 9th Street. One out of the 3 men seen an article of clothing covered with rocks. When he moved the rocks, there was an overwhelming stench of death. Police found a second victim close by. The head was in a can, which was right in view of Eliot Ness's office. In August of 1938, Ness and 35 police officers did a raid on Kingsbury Run and burned down dozens of houses, leaving hundreds homeless. No clues were found, but the murder stopped. James Bedell, the case expert, took Ness's side and claims the raid was intended to protect the poor and Ness just wanted to eliminate the pool of potential victims. Thinking that the killer's main target was poverty, Ness said he wanted people's fingerprints just in case they got murdered. He had them on file. But many people think that that was just an excuse. On July 4th, 1939, the Cleveland Police and Cuyahoga County Police investigated Frank Dolezal and concluded he was a prime suspect. Dolezal lived with Fritz Polillo and was an acquaintance of Edward Andrassy and Rose Wallace. His experience working in a slaughterhouse raised tons of suspicion. He was arrested for the murder of Polillo, but no one else. Dolezal confessed to the murder of Polillo, but Dolezal suffered 6 broken ribs in custody of the sheriff, and the confession appeared to be coached. He went in circles, and most of it was unidentifiable rambling. Bedell stated in his memoirs, "This is the first time that I've ever known anyone to confess to a crime that didn't know the details of the crime to which he was confessing." After a long, excruciating interrogation, Dolezal was found hanging in his cell on August 24th, 1939. Dolezal was 5'8", but hung himself at a hook that was 5 feet and 7 inches off the ground. Bedell interviewed forensic science experts that looked at Dolezal's autopsy and concluded that he didn't end his life like everyone said he did, but didn't say he was murdered either. No one believed that Dolezal was the killer. The case devastated Ness's career by the failure of not successfully finding the killer. Ness left Cleveland and started a new life in Penn State. Ness peacefully passed in 1957. On Dolezal's grave, Bedell and his men engraved the words "Rest Now" on Dolezal's headstone. James Bedell spent 18 years researching the killings and even released a book on it, concluding that Dr. Francis Sweeney to be the murderer. James's reasoning is that after the raid, Sweeney checked himself into a mental hospital in which the murder stopped. Sweeney was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Ness kept Sweeney in the old Cleveland Hotel for 10 to 14 days. Leonard Keeler, the inventor of the polygraph, ran tests on Sweeney, in which he failed multiple times. Keeler was quoted saying, "That's your man. I might as well throw my machine out the window if I say anything different." Francis Sweeney was a cousin of a congressman, so Ness had to be careful. Ness decided to release Sweeney. A couple weeks later, the two victims were found outside of Ness's office. Ness never had enough to arrest Sweeney, but it doesn't end there. In 1938, Emil Fromek, a vagrant, told authorities a doctor tried to drug him. Emil told authorities that it was somewhere around E50th and E55th Street on Broadway Street, but his story was dismissed. James Bedell later discovered that Dr. Sweeney practiced medicine in a modern-looking building on the corner of Broadway Street and Punishing Ave. David Cowles, a member of the Scientific Identification Bureau, had an interview with Cleveland Police Historical Society in 1983, as he suggests that Sweeney could have had an agreement with an undertaker over unclaimed bodies. Conveniently, there was a funeral home right next to Sweeney's office, and the funeral home had a concrete ramp right into Sweeney's office. The people think that all of them sex workers or regulars at the Rolling Third, that the murderer or Dr. Sweeney led victims in with sex, money, alcohol, or drugs. Eliot Ness and James Bedell believe that Dr. Sweeney is in fact the killer, but it is not confirmed. The Cleveland torso killings is a crazy, baffling case, and investigators have gotten close to finding the suspect, but no one has faced time for it. Thank you to everyone for watching. If you're here until the end, leave a comment and let me know what you think. Remember, I love you all and you are gorgeous, and I'll see you in the next time. Bye.